Hi and welcome to the Malat cookery channel. So today I'm going to be making steak au poivre in red wine, which is basically peppered steak in a red wine stew. So it's the middle of winter here and this is proper comfort food that we're going to be making today, and it's really easy to do and very delicious as well. So we're going to be using rump steak, which I've cut into cubes, and also the spice blend we're going to be using from the Malat range is their Montreal Steakhouse seasoning. And if you don't have access to the Malat range of products, then a really decent steakhouse seasoning is what you'll need for this particular recipe. As usual, a full list of ingredients will be given at the end of the video, so let's have a look at those ingredients now and anything else we're going to need for today. So the ingredients for today's recipe, I've got a kilo of rump steak which I've cubed. Now this is enough to do at least 4 to 6 adult portions. So if you're cooking for less, obviously just reduce the portion size as needed. So about a kilo of rump steak into cubes. Going to be using some red wine, about half a bottle of red wine. 3 or 4 carrots which have been peeled and cut into fairly large chunks. This is going to be a longer cooking time for this particular dish in the oven, so big chunks of carrot, meaning they're not going to go too soft. Got about 3 bell peppers, mixture of red, yellow and orange. Got 10 to 12 large close cupped mushrooms which have been washed and cut into quarters. 3 medium-sized white onions. Got about 150 grams of plain or all-purpose flour, and to that I've added a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of black pepper just to season it. The steakhouse seasoning, so this is the Montreal Steakhouse seasoning, I've got 20 grams of that. 1 400 gram tin of chopped tomatoes, and I'm going to add to that about a tablespoon of tomato puree. So the first job we need to do is to take our seasoned flour and add our steak, our cubed steak, into the flour, and then make sure this steak is coated very well on all sides with the flour. So the next step, I've got about 6 tablespoons of olive oil in a large pan. Seems quite a lot, but when the flour mixes with the olive oil, that's going to create our thickening agent for the stew itself. Medium heat, nice high temperature, and then we want to fry this beef on all sides. Any remaining flour you can place into there as well. So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to leave it for 2 or 3 minutes, turn it over and just continue to cook it like that for about 10 minutes until we start to get some colour to the outside of the beef. So once we start to get this colour on the beef, I'm now going to reserve this to one side and then we'll carry on with the rest of the recipe. The beef that I'm going to reserve to one side, I've got the oven on 50 degrees centigrade, just a nice warm place for this beef to stay so it doesn't cool down too much. So we've still got a little bit of oil in the bottom of the pan. Don't worry if there's any flour or beef stuck to the bottom of the pan as there is here, because once we start to add the liquid, the tomatoes and the wine, that will deglaze the pan nicely. So the next thing to go in, once the pan is up to temperature, the onions. I'm just going to fry these off over a medium to low heat for about 3 to 4 minutes until they just start to soften a little bit. So the pan has started to deglaze anyway, and the flavour from this, the flour and beef, absolutely sensational. I'm going to add a lot of depth of flavour to the actual dish itself. Next thing goes in the carrots. And just mix those around for a couple of minutes. Then in go the peppers. I'm just going to fry those for a couple of minutes as well. So the next thing to go in is the steakhouse seasoning. And a true steakhouse seasoning, something like this Montreal steakhouse seasoning, is quite granular. So we just want to fry that off for a couple of minutes just to soften up the herbs, the garlic granules, the onion granules, and everything else that's in there. Back in goes the beef, together with any juices. And I'm just going to mix all of this together before I start adding any of the fluid. Then goes our tin of chopped tomatoes. And our tablespoon, roughly, of tomato puree. Okay. Then our half bottle of red wine. A bit more. So I'm just going to mix all this together. Then I'm going to leave it on a low heat, just a very gentle simmer for about 20 minutes. And then I'm going to transfer the dish to an oven-proof dish into the oven, preheated oven, 170 degrees centigrade. And we're going to cook it for about an hour and a half. So I'm using rump steak. If you're using something like braising steak, then reduce the oven temperature by 10 degrees to 160 degrees centigrade and increase the cooking time by 40 minutes, and that will get that beef absolutely tender. Right, so we've transferred the stew into a nice big oven-proof dish. Before it goes into the oven, I'm going to mix in the mushrooms. So the reason I don't add the mushrooms to the casserole pan or stock pan is because this is going to be cooking now for at least an hour and a half, and I want the mushrooms to have at least some form of structure to them when it's cooked. If you cook them for too long, obviously they're just going to go to mush. So we get that all mixed in, and then this is a complete and utter optional extra. It's something I don't like to do, but there is a certain person in our family that prefers any beef stock or any beef stew or casserole to have quite a dark gravy with it, which I think looks too unnatural personally. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a few drops of gravy browning. And if you're going to do this, make sure that you add the gravy browning into the cap, and then the cap onto the casserole or the stew, because you need so little of the gravy brown in it. It's quite powerful, and I just think really dark gravy just looks too unnatural. This is a bit of a compromise. Obviously you can do it if you want to. So once this is all mixed in, I'm going to cover this with kitchen foil. Make sure it's nice and tight around the edges. And as I said, preheated oven, 170 degrees centigrade for about an hour and a half in the centre of the oven. So there you go, as I said at the start of the video, really delicious, very simple to do and proper comfort food for this winter. Please subscribe to the channel, and as usual, if you've enjoyed this particular video, hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.